Did the resurrection happen? I am of course referring to the resurrection of Jesus Christ, which is the cornerstone of Christianity. If you take the cornerstone away, the building will collapse. If Jesus was not raised alive again from the tomb, Christianity will collapse. There are many answers to this question, but all the answers have to come to the same inevitable but honest conclusion. We don't know for sure. If you say, "Of course Jesus rose from the dead," you have crossed over from reality into belief. Based on historical evidence, we don't know. Based on theological evidence, we still can't be sure. Based on clues, hints, improbable happenings, a few unexplained events, prophecies, the deaths of thousands of martyrs and believers, what Jesus said, and the meaning of life itself, the answer is a little different. Most likely, yes. All these answers are a little inconclusive, so let me explain it this way. On a sliding scale from 1 to 5, where 1 means definitely yes and 5 means definitely no, we will have 2 as highly likely, 3 as unlikely and 4 as highly unlikely. On this scale, the historical evidence for the resurrection will be 4.5. The theological evidence also 4.5. All the other reasons probably 2. So on the basis of these results, I'm going to spend very little time on the history and the theology, and quite a lot of time on the clues and hints. But firstly, a word about the word evidence. Facts, fact or observations presented in support of an assertion, such as there is no evidence for fairies. In law, anything admitted by a court to prove or disprove alleged matters of fact in a trial. Or thirdly, a person who bears witness. To give you some idea how important evidence is, let us think about another realm of human endeavour for a moment, called science. Science has no basis in any of its departments or disciplines without evidence. It lives or it dies on evidence. It advances or it retreats on evidence. Without clear, objective evidence, nothing is proved and therefore doesn't exist until proven. Can we apply these rules to our subject, which is decidedly unscientific? Only if we were studying the resurrection as a miracle, and only if we could repeat that miracle under different circumstances and different times. This would be called a scientific method, and obviously would not work for the resurrection, as we cannot repeat it, even though it was a miracle. It is probably going to be repeated probably over 100 billion times at some future date. But again, that is of no use to us right now. So we need to find something as powerful as evidence, and then we might make some progress. Take a crime scene, for example. Evidence is not the only factor which should be examined. Motive and reason are also equally valid avenues for examination. In many cases, a reason is just as powerful as forensic evidence or DNA sampling. Let me give you an example of a powerful reason. If you have a young family and one of your children is diagnosed with an inoperable disease, such as cancer, what would you believe about the afterlife and the existence of a God in those circumstances. You would have every reason in the world to want an afterlife for your child. You would have no evidence, but you wouldn't need any, would you? The reason is just as valid and as powerful as evidence. Now multiply that reason by 22,000. Even if you have a healthy family, 22,000 children per day under the age of 5 are dying because of malnutrition, disease or disasters around the world. So either God exists and doesn't care, and we are living in the cruelest possible world, or God exists and does care and is doing something about it without any obvious evidence at all. Or the third option, God doesn't exist, and again we are still living in the cruelest possible world. So, of these three options, which would you choose? If you were sat in the hospital with your own child in intensive care, which would you choose? Even if you have no family, you still cannot ignore the figure 22,000. In the time you have been sitting and listening to this video, which is about 5 minutes, 76 of those 22,000 children have died. So you will understand by now that the resurrection of Jesus cannot be examined on its own. For anybody to be raised from the dead requires a miracle. For children to have an afterlife requires a miracle. And miracles require the supernatural. Of course, there can be no supernatural without the existence of a God. Obviously, only two of these choices make any sense. The first can be ruled out, as there is no point in there being a God who is cruel. I suppose it is possible, but then you might as well believe that the universe was created by a malignant and evil super alien, and probably even call it Satan. As humans are obviously moral beings, as opposed to being immoral, then we are only left with two choices. The second option, that there is no God, has been examined in another video talk, so I'm going to plough straight ahead with choice 1. If you need to know more on this subject, then you will have to read the book. The book is available as an e-reader and examines all aspects of existence, both human and supernatural. A link can be seen at the end of this video. For example, I have just mentioned the problem of children and relating it to the existence of an afterlife. Jesus was obviously familiar with this problem and mentions it on 2 occasions. As he was supposed to be human as well as divine, he must represent both the natural and the supernatural, and therefore we should listen to what he has to say. In Matthew chapter 18, he says this: "See that you do not look down on one of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven." And then in the next chapter he said this: "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." So yes, children are very different to adults, and it is almost 100% certain that they have a better life immediately after leaving this one. I believe 200% and more in what Jesus said about any subject, and we must be grateful for Matthew, Mark, Luke and John for recording what he said, even though we know by now that it wasn't actually Matthew, Mark, Luke or John who wrote the words. It makes no difference. The words that Jesus is supposed to have said are still powerful and life-changing. And therefore I propose that if we can show that what Jesus said and did are powerful and life-changing, as well as possibly being true, then the miracle of a bodily resurrection may not be impossible after all.